something I would like to know is actually how did you discover this passion or the focus on personal branding? Because if I'm not mistaken, your background is quite different. So how did you come to discover it?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a journey into personal branding. So I'll give you a little bit of a lowdown of sort of what I've done throughout my career. So I started out wanting to work in the legal field, actually, and that's sort of where my academic background was originally. And I worked in a really amazing sort of small legal consultancy for a while, but very quickly I realized that maybe I wanted to do something a bit more creative, a little bit more hands-on. And I also really fell in love with sort of the business behind the consultancy versus the legal work itself. So I actually went back to university and studied psychology. So I wanted to better understand people, the way they behaved, and I thought this would then translate into whatever I wanted to do next. So yeah, I went back and studied psychology, specializing in motivational behavior. I did my dissertation around attitudes towards AI technologies and the way people engage with them. And then whilst I was studying, I actually started designing websites, just sort of as a creative outlet, really. And I started working with a lot of founders and creators, basically, and very quickly found they had no strategy behind their brand or their business in that sense. And I thought this was a good way to actually use my psychology to help them actually build a sort of a presence and identity for themselves alongside the website. So this not only helped them, but it also helped the success of websites I built. And then that's kind of where it came about, really. I sort of left the website stuff. I still enjoy doing it now and again, but I focus more on the personal brand strategy side of things now.
What I find really interesting, or you can say even courageous or bold and ambitious, is that despite studying one field, switching to something completely different, and because sometimes people feel like that if you study something, you need to do it. And of course, it's kind of uncomfortable to switch or focus on something different. But as you just said, it's okay to change because you may discover a completely new passion, new field, and something completely different.
Exactly that. Yeah, I gave a talk in a school recently, and I talked about that sort of same topic about how I think when we're younger, we often think that we're going to be stuck in that sort of field that we've chosen for ourselves. So for me, like I chose law quite early on. And then when
Mhm.
you actually get to working in the field, you don't know whether you're going to really like it or not. And obviously, for me, I enjoyed it whilst I was there, but it's not something I saw myself doing long term. So I think,
Yeah.
especially whilst you're young, and you can do it at any stage of your life as well, but you have to sort of have the confidence to try something different. You don't have to like completely change industry, but you can pivot, twist, and turn, and that's completely okay. And I think you've got to be comfortable with finding something that you can do long term because you're going to be in a job for a really long time. You've got to be happy and comfortable with it. You don't want to be stuck somewhere where
Mhm.
you don't feel like you can grow and thrive yourself.
That is true. And I always try to remind myself or keep in mind if you look, if you think about the future and then look back, you would be regretting, oh, why didn't I try back then? Why even try? Maybe it would work, maybe not. But now I'm regretting that I have not.
Exactly. It's one of those things, isn't it? You can, I think, when you're in the moment, you think, what if it doesn't work? But there's a massive possibility that it really could work as well. And the future you could be so disappointed if you never even gave it a chance to begin with.
Mhm. And I think another great point that you said, if I haven't missed it, is that you worked in that company and then you decided to study again, which I feel like that sometimes people, or there's like this mindset that once you finish your studies, you are kind of over. I'm not going to study again. I've done it. But what was impressive, what you just said, that you worked, but you still went back to study, which I think is another great point and something that says a lot about your mindset.
Definitely. I think it's, again, that same sort of bracket of not being scared to try something different. If you don't like the thing that you're doing right now, there are so many other options. For everyone, it's not a possibility to go back to university, but you can do other things yourself to try and gain credibility in a different field. So you can start
Mhm.
doing research about it, take short courses, reach out to people in that industry and ask them for sort of how they got into the field, what they'd recommend doing, and if you wanted to pivot, for example. So all of those things are within your control that you can do. You don't always have to go back to university, obviously, because it's great if you can, but
Yeah.
there are so many other ways you can pivot into a new industry as well.
Yeah, I agree. And as we said, you never know what you might discover later on. Um,
Exactly.
Also, one thing that stuck in my mind is that you said actually that you did dissertation that was somehow related to AI, which
Yes.
is it because I find it very interesting as well. Like, because obviously AI is a big topic, it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So Is it something that you are interested, or because you saw their potential, or why actually focus on AI?
Yeah, it was an interesting choice because a lot of people sort of chose quite traditional psychology topics to sort of write their thesis on. And I did like a research project around it as well. But for me, I was really fascinated about AI technology, how they were coming about. It was a few years ago now, so it's before AI was really super
Yeah.
mainstream. So I was interested in understanding whether there were psychological reasons behind why some people were super sort of passionate about getting to know, like ChatGPT, for example. Why do some people
Yeah.
use it all the time, and why are some people really scared and overwhelmed by it? So I looked at different motivational theories. One of them's called self-determination theory, and it looks at sort of three conditions that are sort of required for people to want to be motivated to engage. And one of them was relatedness, and about how they almost need to feel like they're part of a community or they connect in some way to other people doing the same thing as them. That's why for younger people, where there's a lot of discussion and talk about AI, uptake tends to be a lot higher. Whereas for older generations or people that don't come across it in their day-to-day job as much, it seems a lot more distant and sort of more of a scary topic to talk about. But yeah, it was a
Mhm.
super interesting sort of research project, lots of different areas on it, and yeah, lots of interesting findings as well.
Yeah, and if you looked at kind of similar dissertation today with how much the AI has evolved, do you think it will be, I don't know, much more comprehensive, very different, or similar, or what do you think?
I think it would be, I think the findings would be a lot stronger because I think at the time, not many people had extensively used AI. So we were sort of assessing their motivations to engage in literally things like ChatGPT or the very sort of more like basic mainstream AI platforms. Whereas
Mhm.
these days, I think, especially us as creators, we engage with so many different types of AI platforms that maybe the result would be completely different because obviously we're used to completely different technologies that we use
Yeah,
now, basically.
and it makes one curious, what is it going to look like, I don't know, in a few years or even in a few months with the advancement and the progress?
Gosh, I wish I knew. I have no idea, but I genuinely think that if we, as sort of creators, business owners, people that use AI in day to day life, if we use it as a tool rather than replacements of our skills, we can always make positive use of it, and it's not going to take over our lives, it's not going to take over our jobs. It's about learning to sort of adapt and sort of use the technology versus letting it
Mhm.
replace us.